Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. According to a Reuters report, US President-elect Donald Trump has spoken with Russian President Vladimir Putin and advised him not to escalate the Ukraine war. In addition, on Wednesday, President Joe Biden reportedly plans to urge Trump not to abandon Kyiv. Trump has many times promised to end the war in a day without specifying how he plans to achieve this. Several people familiar with the call with Putin, who spoke on the basis of anonymity, reported that Trump had reminded Putin of America's sizable military presence in Europe. If this call is confirmed to have been made, what could it mean for Ukraine and the rest of Europe? Well, to explore this question, I am joined by Andreas Umland. He's an analyst at Swedish Institute of International Affairs and a regular contributor to TVP World. Mr. Umland, welcome back to TVP World. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks for having me again.
It's a pleasure as always. So there seems to be a bit of confusion. I mean, did the call take place or not? Various media outlets have said it has been, but they're based on anonymous sources. And I've just been speaking to a Ukrainian member of parliament who says, well, as far as he's aware, it hasn't taken place. What do you make of it?
I also don't know for sure. I'm also getting just the media information, but I wouldn't exclude it, let's say, this way, and expect it to be then clarified. If it indeed has taken place, and if indeed Trump said what he is reported to have said, then this, as it looks now, it wouldn't be too bad, or at least better than I would have expected. And perhaps there will be then indeed some gains for Ukraine out of it if Trump indeed takes a tough stance on Putin. And but that is just maybe wishful thinking at the current situation, and we'll have to see how it develops.
Understood. Now, how would you define a tough stance? Because, obviously from the Ukrainian perspective, so far as we know, giving up Ukrainian territory is simply off the table. What could Trump do in this so-called hard approach towards Putin to achieve peace and not just a ceasefire?
Well, the ideal version here would be, of course, to force Russia to withdraw to its legitimate state territory, perhaps in exchange, let's say, for Ukraine withdrawing its troops from Russian state territory, from the Kursk region. Whether that will be possible is difficult to say, but a lot depends here, indeed, on the US, and if at least Trump takes a tough stance, then I think there could be some sort of negotiation achieved that perhaps Ukraine can agree to, and where there may be some intermediate solutions that Ukraine could stomach, but this will all have to depend on the unity between Ukraine, the US, and Europe.
Understood. So it's a bit of a process as you see it at the moment. Now, you mentioned Europe. What is Europe's role in achieving a sustainable peace in Ukraine? How do you see that?
I think that role will grow independently from what happens in the US, from the way in which Trump will develop and the US foreign policy will develop. Even if Kamala Harris had won the elections, I think Europe would have to get its act together and to take more responsibility on its own continent. And so what we should get in Europe, I mean, we should be getting ready to is basically to replace the United States in a number of ways. and to mobilize our own resources to make them more effective, to take care of our own security. This is, of course, also the discourse of the Trumpists, but not only of the Trumpists, that the American role will decline in comparison to earlier periods.
Understood. Now, assuming that happens, then the role of countries like Germany, for example, will, we assume, have to increase to take up the slack. Now, Germany is in a bit of a mess politically at the moment, isn't it? How do you see Chancellor Scholz dealing with this and the foreign policy aspects that he has to face with the new Trump presidency?
I'm afraid as long as Scholz remains Chancellor and the current government remains in place, there will not be a major change. The constellation is just such that the Social Democrats are currently dominating in the government, and they have inner problems within the party to define their course. And so what I'm expecting, in a way also hoping, is that we will soon have new elections, and then we will have different government and probably also a different chancellor. And then perhaps this different government could take decisions that the current coalition was not able to take during the last 2.5 years, in spite of this encouraging speech that Scholz gave 3 days after the large-scale invasion started, on 27th of February 2022, where he spoke of a change of times, change of epochs. But in practice, this has not been fully implemented. So in terms of its GDP, Germany has not delivered much military help to Ukraine. But in absolute terms, it's of course significant, but that is just because the German economy is larger. But if you compare, for instance, Germany with the Scandinavian countries, then Germany has delivered much less military help.
Indeed. Well, we shall, of course, be watching what happens in Germany very closely, and of course, President-elect Trump's moves going forward regarding Ukraine. Mr. Umland, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Have a good day.
Thanks for having me again.
Thank you. And that's all from us in this episode of World Talks. Goodbye.